This episode is sponsored by Days of Wonder. Episode 44 of the Board Game Geek podcast, where we geek out about board games, the mechanisms behind them, and the people who create them. I'm your host, Candice Harris, and I am so happy to be here today with Alan Moon, who probably needs no introduction considering he's the designer of one of the most popular modern classics, Ticket to Ride, and a ton of other games. How's it going today, Alan?
Hey, Candice. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's great to catch up with you for a bit. What's new?
Well, actually, what's new is that my parents are old, and I've been spending a lot of time taking care of them. And I'm old too, so it's a little stressful to do that when you're old.
Yeah.
But that's okay. They took care of me for a long time, so I'm okay to pay them back.
Yeah, sorry to hear they're having a rough time. But that's good that you're around to help them.
Hey, well, we went in between all that. We went on a several-week trip out west of the national parks, which was awesome.
Cool.
I'd never been to the Grand Canyon or Arches or Canyonlands. It was amazing. It was really a great trip.
Which park was your favorite?
I mean, Arches was really my favorite. It's so unusual. Although they were all good. Even Canyonlands I thought would be slightly disappointing after the Grand Canyon, but it's not at all. It's incredible. Just the scope of it is
cool.
Amazing. Yeah. And Zion was beautiful too.
I was going to ask if you went to Zion and Bryce. Okay.
Bryce was beautiful too, but it was freezing. So we were up at 9,000 feet and the temperature was in the 20s and it was windy and we had no winter clothes. We had not packed any. So we had to go buy parkas. It was freezing. It was amazing.
Oh, man.
So that was unusual. But because it was when we were in Moab, Utah, it was beautiful. 60s and 70s, just gorgeous. It was just a great trip all around. But yeah, it was kind of fun place. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. When I was moving to LA, and I did the cross-country drive from Pennsylvania to California, I stopped at Badlands in South Dakota, and then also Yellowstone was amazing. And this was like mid to late October, and we had some snow in Yellowstone, so that was really cool. And we also did Death Valley, but years ago, in 2008, I think, years ago, I visited Bryce and Zion when I was on a trip to Vegas to visit my grandma. We did a road trip, me and my now partner, Matt, but we were just friends at the time.
Yeah. Well, the Badlands was, I still think it's possibly my favorite park in America. It was so great. I was just like dumbfounded by like how cool it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see any crazy wildlife?
Just the prairie dogs.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think we saw anything else there. We didn't. I mean, we saw lots of sort of common wildlife on the trip, but we didn't see anything unusual. It was just the scenery was incredible.
Yeah. So, you're making me want to do another road trip.
Actually, when the first night at Bryce, we went to dinner at the nearby town that was like 5 miles away, and on the way back, it was a blizzard. I mean, it was just It was incredible. Yeah, it was so funny. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. What's new in the gaming world for you, or the game design world?
Yeah, I mean, I have not had a lot of time to play games. We have a couple of really good friends in New Orleans, and we usually get together with them at least once a week. But we haven't even seen them in about a month, I think. So we're actually going out to dinner with them tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing them. So, but usually, we've been playing. Recently, we finished up My Island. That took quite a while. Cool. I loved my city, but I was surprised that My Island took like twice as much time, maybe even 2.5 times as much. So I didn't like it as much, partly because of that, but just partly I don't know. The mechanics didn't appeal to me. I played My City twice all the way through and really
Oh,
enjoyed it.
cool. Cool.
Yeah. So I haven't played a lot of new games. Jan and I occasionally play some of our favorites, when we have a chance. So I don't know, and I didn't get to. I only stayed 2 days at the Gathering of Friends, so that was a super bummer. So I
Oh.
didn't get a week long, game.
Yeah, to binge a bunch of games. You have a new version of Union Pacific coming out, right?
I am really excited about it. Yeah. A while ago, I made a deal with Sean Brown of Mr. B Games, and I think we're going to talk a little more about why later. And he's going to do a new version of Union Pacific. It's going to have a double-sided board, so the one side will have the original game with minor changes, mostly to the board and possibly to the cards, but not rules changes at all. And the other side will have a new version called Great Western Rail, set in England, which has quite a few new rules, and I'm excited about it. So I don't know if we're going to put it in, but you could actually use the new rules on the first side with some changes, but that might be too much to put in the game. I don't know. So it's because it's kind of already two games in one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that'll be kickstarted, I think, later this year or early next year. We were supposed to get, be further along, but I've just been, out of town.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Been dealing with personal stuff.
Yeah.
Life delays. So I've actually never played Union Pacific, and so yeah, I know, I know. I'm still playing catch up from getting into the hobby late, but can you kind of describe is it? I know it's trains. Is it like a stock market manipulation thing with trains or route building?
Yeah, it's basically your turn. You lay a piece of track for one of the railroads, and then you draw stock cards. If you don't want to do that, then you can play your stock cards down onto the board. So that's the tension in the game, because the scoring happens randomly, although sort of more programmed. The original version was totally random. Now there's scorecards in certain parts of the deck. So it's a real tension between, you always want more stock, but you want to get down because it doesn't score anything in your hand. So
yeah, okay, that sounds cool. I like train games.
It's pretty good. It's pretty basic. The new version adds in sort of an economy feature where you can use money to do different things, and it forces you to play railroads play trains for different railroads rather than always playing the one you want. So.
Oh, cool. I'm looking forward to checking that out. That sounds cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it's been that's been around since you originally designed this one back in the late 90s or something.
Yeah, it was nominated for Game of the Year in 1999, the year after Elfenland won, and that was the jury handled things a little differently back then. So it was interesting. I heard that the vote, and you never know what the truth is because they meet in secret and they're very. But I heard the vote was 6-5. I lost to, I think, one of the Wolfgang Kramer games won. Tikal, I think, won.
Oh, okay.
So that that would have been pretty cool to win 2 years in a row, but.
Well, I just got back from BGG.Spring, and I had a great time there. It's always good to see Aldi and the team there, because it's we all live in different parts of the country. So the 2 times a year, we get to kind of most of us all see each other. But I've been lately, I got an early copy of Arcs, which is a new Cole Wehrle game. It's kind of a space opera condensed game with a cool trick-taking action selection mechanism.
Wow.
It's not for everybody, but the people who it is for love it. So I got to play that 3 times. I don't know if you know Roy Candice from the Dice Tower, but I had him on the podcast with me for episode 42. And we talked about, he told me he was going to BGG.Spring. So we were we should play some games together. And you know how sometimes that goes, where you say you're going to do something, but it just doesn't happen. But we actually made it happen. We got to play a game of KeyForge together, and one of my ARCs plays was with him. Then there's a GMT game that I've been really loving, and I got a chance to play that. It's called Border Reivers. And it's like this unique hybrid. Like, it has card drafting, it's got like Eurogame mechanisms fused with some war game elements. And yeah, it just feels so different. And every single time I play this, well, the 2 times I've played this game, I get ahead in victory points throughout the game. So I'm leading the whole game, and then at the end, I like fall behind because of like end game scoring and people targeting me because I'm ahead. So I'm like, I gotta try to figure that one out. But I really enjoy it. And then I also, like, one of the things I love about going to BGG.Spring or any of the conventions that are like play cons, there are different designers there. So I got to try some unreleased games. I met Courtney for the first time. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pipeline or Curious Cargo, but he is the designer of those games and a game called Trailblazers. But he showed me, he's basically launching a line of these fast playing, light, puzzly games. And I don't know if this is I think this might be going to be the first release. It's called 5 Boroughs. It's about the boroughs in New York City. And it's got this like almost like Uno card playing where you have cards that have polyomino shapes, and they also have colors, and you're building up this like 3D board. And the way you're doing it is by playing cards. So if I play my card, let's say you played before me and you put a yellow box, like a 2x2 out. I can play a yellow card in my hand and get whatever piece, or I can match your shape and kind of change the color. And the way you're like building your city, you have to kind of chain, like colors have to be placed adjacent to the same color. And it was really neat. It's like quick, puzzly, and it's one of those games where, you know, you start from nothing and then you're building up this cool 3D kind of city. I'm excited to see what he does with the production of that, because he had these like really nice 3D printed pieces for his prototype. Yeah. And then, a couple other highlights from BGG.Spring. My good friend Roberto Panetta had a beautiful booth set up at BGG.Spring. He is I guess, first-time game designer, or this is his first game that's going to be going to Kickstarter in August. It's called Gems of Iridescia. And it's got like, it's a lighter game, but it's, I would say, like a couple notches up above Splendor in complexity, where you are like moving your little worker up this mountain and exploring tiles, flipping tiles over to find gems. And there are I think 4 or 5 different colored gems that you're collecting. And then you're trying to craft items like, oh, if I have a yellow and a purple and 2 greens, I can craft this item. But the twist on it is there are these dice that have this like kind of market manipulation thing, where whenever I mine for blue, I'm going to tick up the die. And eventually, if the die is at 5 or 6, I might want to sell a bunch of blues to make money, because you can buy different ability cards and all sorts of like game breaking effects. But it's really, really cool because it has good player interaction and it's beautiful. Like, the art style is like reminiscent of Feudum. I don't know if you've ever seen that game before.
That sounds interesting. My first impression of all games like that is like they're so complex. You know, they have like so many ways of scoring, and you know, you have to concentrate on so many things. So when I play them, I'm always surprised actually that, you know, that they're really good games. A lot of them. And,
yeah,
they're not all for me. You know, I don't know what.
Sure.
I don't know why some games appeal to me and you know, most don't, but I do, you know, respect that. Like, the games are so, you know, they're so interestingly designed. You know, there's so many elements to them.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many. That's the amazing thing, how many games are coming out all the time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes, we're flooded. We're flooded. There's something for everyone. The other thing I was going to mention is that I also did an episode like a year ago with Isaac Vega, and I finally got to actually sit down and play a couple games with him. I also met a designer, Ken Jenkins, who has a bluffing game called Turnip that's coming out at Gen Con. And it was super fun. Like, it's a little different. Like, everybody has these turnip cards and you're placing them down, and you could either place one face down or two cards, one face down, one face up. And you're saying like, oh, the value of my turnips is 5. And people can call you if you and then you have to reveal them. If you were lying, they get a little turnip token, which is going to be worth 2 points. If you were telling the truth, you get the turnip token. But what you're trying to do is eventually someone's going to call harvest as you're collecting these cards, and whoever has the highest total value kind of wins the round. But it was pretty neat. Like, we played 2 games of it, because the first game we were like, oh, like, why would we want to lie? And like, but by the second game, we all had like the swing of it. And I think it's going to look really, really beautiful, because like the art I saw on this version was super cool. So I'm looking forward to like seeing the final version of Turnip at Gen Con.
Usually those type of games, yeah, there has to be a real strong motive for people to lie, or else they're just going to always just tell the truth. Yeah. That's
Right. Yeah, so it's a little different than, you also, like, everybody has the same hand of like different value cards, and at the very beginning of the round, everyone stashes one card, which will be worth the amount of points that the card is. So you could stash your 7, which is the highest card, but I think you only have 1 7. So it's not going to help you harvest better if your 7 is stashed, but it'll be worth 7 points. So it has some cool decision points. And I don't know, Alan, I don't know if you are a Feld fan. I wouldn't say that I am necessarily, but Ian O'Toole recently put Forum Trajanum on my radar, and I got a chance to play that, and I really loved it. It's just this like tough optimization puzzle kind of game, and I'm terrible at it. Like, but that makes me want to play it more so I could like figure it out. But I don't know if you've tried that one ever before, but it was very cool, and I really appreciate that it's, after playing it once, it's very kind of simple. It seems more complex when you're learning it, because there's some icons you have to get used to, but it's really like got a really smooth flow to it, and it's just like so puzzly.
Yeah. The point salad type of games, they generally don't appeal to me. There's just too much going on. I like, my whole design philosophy is to give people 2 or 3 choices,
Yeah.
and make them really tough. And what I like is, several minutes later, they know whether they made the right choice or not. In the point salad games, it seems like, there's just too much to think about all the time. And
oh yeah. And this one is actually not as point salady, because there are 3 phases in the game where you score. And almost like El Grande, you like play 3 rounds, score, play 3 rounds, score. I think it's play 4 rounds, score, 4 rounds, score, 4 rounds, score. So there's like a scoring phase in this. It's not like every little action you're doing is giving you points.
Okay.
But that is, a lot of Feld games are point salady.
Yeah.
I would say I'm not like a huge fan of that either. But I'm looking forward to exploring this one a little bit more. I ended up buying a copy.
I don't know how you plan to play all these games. That's incredible.
I don't know either. I guess I'm like a vampire that never sleeps. But anyways, as always, I love getting input from my guest co-hosts on what they'd like to chat about. So today, for a bit of a different twist, we're not talking about specific board games. Instead, we're going to discuss our board game hobby pet peeves. this was something you were interested in discussing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can start. Do you want to do them in any specific order, or?
Oh, no. We won't get into them just yet, but
Oh,
more
okay.
so just calling out that, you were like wanting to kind of share some of your vent about them.
I would love to. I figure, I'm old enough. If people don't like it, that's okay.
You've been around for a while, so yeah. Been playing these all sorts of games, creating games. Anyways, before we start talking about our board game hobby pet peeves, I'd love to hear what you've been playing lately, Alan. So let's jump into fresh plays.
Yeah, fresh plays. I don't think mine are too fresh, but because like I said, I haven't had a lot of time lately.
Right.
But a couple games that really struck me in the last year or so were Path to Civilization, and I would say that one of the things that made it extra fun was Cedric Calmont from Captain Games before he was the head of Repos. If you've never had the honor of having him explain one of his games, it's really fun. I mean, he's just a super fun guy, and he's real enthusiastic. So he explained the game to me, and I think Daryl Andrews and some other people. And so it started off as a real fun experience just listening to him. But I think normally that would fall into the category of for me that too much going on, but I really enjoyed it. It has a very clever basic mechanic where you have 5 cards and you only get to assign 4 of them each round, and the other one goes out of the game. So obviously the starting cards you have are the weaker ones, and you're gonna get rid of those, but not always. So it's real clever how that works. Like you sometimes you want to play all 5, and so it's a real tough choice as to which one to leave out. And I also tend to love games where you get a lot of stuff, like a lot of a lot of resources.
Yeah.
That just appeals to me because the more stuff, the better. I just love it. So that combination of the real clever card mechanic plus getting lots of stuff, and then what do you do with your stuff? It's real fun. I would say for me that I feel like it almost seems like the game is too short, and I know that it's not a short game, and so the problem is, if you play with the wrong people, it's too long. But if you play with people who play quickly, I feel like the game almost ends too early because you're just getting into all those combinations and everything, and I think that's a tricky part of game design, like trying to figure out the right length. So you get to really use those combinations and enjoy them. But you don't drag the game on too long.
Sure.
So for modern games, I think that's a real key designer question.
Yeah. I haven't played Path of Civilization yet, but I keep hearing good things about it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I know that there's been controversy over because they use AI art, which I know is a very controversial subject, and to be honest with you, I don't really know how I feel about it. But I think Cedric took a lot of grief about that from people, and I think that we can get into that in Pet Peeves. like how nasty people can be, in our game hobby. It's amazing.
Yeah. So that was Path of Civilization. I ended up playing twice at BGG.Spring a small game called Little Tavern. And my friend Roberto introduced this game to me. It's a 2024 release, I think, designed by Maxime Roomberg, who designed Mind Up. I don't know if you ever played Mind Up, but it's kind of like a 6-Nimit kind of experience, but I thought I liked it. I only played it a couple times. And then it's also Theo Riviere, who's one of the co-designers of Sea Salt and Pepper. And both of these designers created The Loop, which I have not played. Mm-hmm. And this game is Little Taverns from Repos Production, plays with 3 to 5 players. And it's a very light little game where everybody's going to have a little table in front of them, this little cardboard table. And you are trying to earn the most tips from these different people that are, or creatures that are going to be seated at your table. And almost like love letter, every type of creature or clan has a different rule to them. So like there are elves, and elves tip better when there are more elves at your table. And each table can only have 4 different cards around it, or 4 different people seated at them. So the way your turn goes is you draw a card, and we have this like just random, the pile is just like all the cards are face down in the center of the table. So if it's my turn, I draw a card, I reveal it, and I decide whose table I want to put it at. I could put it at my table, or I could put it at your table, and then if I put it at your table, you get to draw the next card. So like I said, elves tip more when there are more elves at the table, and then there are like witches, and witches score better, like tip better when there are other witches at the tavern, meaning at anybody's table. And then there are romantics that want to be seated with another romantic, and or else they won't score at all. There are goblins that don't tip unless they're with their leader. There's the leader's called like Billy or something. And then there are nobles. Like, so there are just like 10 or 12 or so different types of clans that have rules, and you're trying to like optimize your scoring at your table. And then there are also these like event cards. Once everybody has at least one card at their table, you can, for your turn, instead of drawing a new card, you can pull one of these events and trigger it. And that might say something like everybody needs to pass one card at their table to you pick the direction. And so you're like swapping people out and stuff like that. Or like, hey, you get to draw another card from the stack. And then if you want to, you can swap it out with someone from your table. So it's like special abilities like that. And the game, it's very like short, kind of fillery game. You know, once somebody has $25 worth of tips, usually like after 2 or 3 rounds, it's over. But it's really cute looking and fun, and I like the whole, you know, the fact that there's no really set turn order system. It's like you choose, and once my table's full, nobody can play any cards to my table. But there's still a chance for some shenanigans with these scroll events. Like maybe somebody will shift from my table. Have you ever heard of this one?
I haven't, but I love the fact that there's goblins and, you know, other creatures and romantics in the same game.
Yeah. And nobles and witches. And yeah. The production is really cute too, because the way they did the cards, when you sit the cards around the table, it looks like the people, these different characters are sitting at the table. And it's a small box, so it doesn't take up much space on your shelf.
I probably will be ordering that later today.
Yeah, it's cool. I need to get myself a copy as well. So that is Little Tavern. What else have you been playing whenever you last got a chance to play games?
Well, kind of along the lines of Path to Civilization, I also really liked Ancient Knowledge. It was another game I was surprised I like. But again, it has sort of the elements I like. It has a really interesting card combinations. And it's the same type of thing where you're trying to develop your cards. But the difference in this one is that the cards are all going in decline as the game goes on. And so, normally as a designer, I would say you don't ever want like negative, you want like something positive in the game, but it actually really puts a lot of pressure on you because that game is sliding to the left and will eventually, I'm going to say go extinct, but it's really going extinct. And so it's cool. You're trying to use the card before you lose it. And, and there's ways to manipulate the cards by moving them further back on the track so you get to use them longer. And it's a very, very clever game. And again, it feels like you get lots of stuff. There's lots of different choices with, what kind of cards you can get. And it's really good. And I sort of have the same feeling about that where sometimes it ends a little bit too quickly. Again, you're sort of having fun and, so you're not really paying attention to what the end game condition is. You're just trying to build your machine and all of a sudden somebody almost ends it.
It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't get to
exactly.
use my machine.
Yeah, yeah, but it's and just the card choices, like which ones to keep and which ones to get rid of, really really interesting. And I mean, I've played a few times, and I when I talk about these games, I'm usually terrible at these games. So but I'm having fun, and that's
Yeah,
what really
yeah.
matters, right? So and I think it's for me, it's also important. Like when I play with Janet, if she likes the game, it tends to be played more than once. If she
Sure,
doesn't
sure.
like that, then there's unless I'm really gung ho about it, there's not much point in continuing.
Yeah, yeah. And is this one like a word game?
No, no, it's
It's
you're erecting monuments and building artifacts, and so
okay.
you're a civilization, and as time goes by, your knowledge goes away, and you're bringing in new areas of knowledge. So that's what the
Gotcha.
whole decline thing is. Yeah, it's like I said, the interesting, as the cards advance along the track, it really puts a lot of pressure on you, and it's probably if you play with the wrong people, you could spend a lot of time trying to maximize your turn. But
Uh,
I try to do the best I can, but I'm not going to take forever to think about the turn. That's just not fun for
yep, we'll get into that when we talk pet peeves. Cool. That's another one I need to try. I remember seeing the box at Spiel last year,
me.
and I just haven't gotten around to trying this one, and it is called Ancient Knowledge.
You should not.
So, next game I'm going to mention is a game that like surprised me quite a bit at BGG.Spring. So, I heard about this game called La Famiglia, The Great Mafia War, when it was about to come out or just after it came out, and all I heard the pitch was team area control game. And I was like, huh, that sounds cool. I like team games. I like area control games. But I actually, I played this game and we learned it from the rule book from scratch. And it surprised me, how many really cool mechanisms are in there. So this is a game that came out in 2023. It's designed by Maximilian Maria Thiel. It's published by Furlan Spiel and Capstone Games in the US. And it plays with exactly 4 players because it's a 2 versus 2 war game set in the 80s during the Great Mafia War. And basically, 2 teams are fighting for control of Sicily. Off the bat, this theme is not going to resonate with a lot of people. It's a war game, but it's pretty abstracted. So anyway, what I found is it's this. You got the area control, you got the team play, but it's also got a lot of heavy economic Eurogame mechanisms, which I found to be really cool. And you're also placing secret order tiles on the board, and then we reveal them and things happen. And that's reminiscent of Game of Thrones board game, which I like those kind of games. I love sneaky stuff like, hey, you don't know if this token I put down is, something peaceful or is it something attacky? But anyways, there's a big map of Sicily that's divided into 12 mandamenti. Mandamenti were regions of influence where 3 or more families were affiliated with the mafia. And each of the mandamentis has 3 areas. And to have control of a mandamenti, which is your goal, you're trying to have your team have the most control of these mandamenti, you need to control at least 2 regions within the 3. So you need 2/3 to get control of the mandamenti. And at the end of a round, if one player controls 5 mandamenti, then that team wins the game. Otherwise, if that team between the 2 players controls 6 mandamenti, then you can win. And otherwise, it just goes to 4 rounds, and then whichever team has the most wins. So, the main goal is area control. You have soldiers that are just cubes that are in different areas. Like you start in different areas of the board, and there are also gray neutral cubes, which you can try to remove off the board, and then they convert to like pretty much your family's color. Everybody has like basically an asymmetric family, and the families are fictional characters. And so you have this player board, and all of the families are asymmetric. They have a different set of upgraded order tiles. Like everybody starts with, I think, the same 5 basic order tiles that you can put on the board to like supply, add units, get money, or attack adjacent spaces and stuff like that. But each player board has like upgraded versions of these tiles that are asymmetric, and you have to unlock them by like removing discs off of these like influence tracks. Now, I know this is going to be way too much for your taste, Alan. But there's like a justice track, which is going to like, the more you level up on that track, you're going to have more effective combat when a car is present. There's a police track that's going to, the more influence you have, the more you can deploy soldiers on the board, or the more soldiers you can deploy when you're deploying them on the board. There is an economy track, which I think is helping you put, they're called drug labs, but you can call them factories if you don't want to refer to them as drug labs, but they're helping you make money. And then there's a church track, which helps you get more recruits into your headquarters. Think of El Grande, where you need to get your caballeros from the supply into your court. I don't remember the exact terminology, but you have to there's a 2-step process to get cubes out onto the board, your soldiers out on the board. And the thing that surprised me most about this game, because I knew it was team area control, but there's a planning phase that has this like really innovative worker placement like style action selection, where you have this like almost like a grid, these columns where you'll have different color influence discs, and on your turn you can pick one of these influence discs. There are some neutral ones, and there are different ones for player colors. If I pick a neutral one or my player color, it's free, and I pick it up and I put it on one of the action spaces on this like action sheet at the bottom. This is like worker placement. However, if I pick up an opponent's or even my teammates, I have to pay them $1 to use their disc, but I'm taking an action. The other thing you can do is take all of the discs from the column, from a particular column, and there are these other actions, slightly stronger, like take start player, which I learned was very important, and my team could not do the whole game, but it's expensive, and you get to put an order out and also like remove more tokens from your board to level up your family. But this action sheet sort of mechanism then at the end of the round slides up, and a new sheet comes out, and there's some different actions available. And just the choices of which disc do I take, because if I make this column really cheap, then my opponent may be able to take these powerful actions at the top of the action board, and I don't want them to do that, but I might have to like take one of their discs from a different column. So it was super neat. I don't know if if what I'm saying makes sense to anybody listening, but it was just really, really cool. The actions you're taking is like getting more soldiers into your HQ, which is a screen. We all have screens where we keep our money secret and our soldiers that are available. Then you can like deploy soldiers on the boards into different regions or areas. You can get money from your factories or drug labs. You can get cars, speedboats, build more drug labs. Speedboats are going to help you with your attacking, because you can like kind of ride along the coast to sneak into another area. There are actions that let you just issue orders, which is put one of your order tiles face down on a space, and your teammate can look. Like we can talk and say, yeah, how about this? What if we put that right there? Yeah, that's great. You can bluff a bit, because some of the order tokens are simply just resupply, like get more soldiers and make some money. But some of them are like attack an adjacent space to try to like, get control of a Mondamenti. So then like after you do this like worker placement stuff, then there's an execution phase where you reveal all the order tokens that were placed, and each order token has an initiative value. So then they go off based on the initiative. And I guess the other, like two other things I want to mention about this game that I thought were cool is one, you have these control tiles, and there are 11 of them in the game, but you only use 7 each game. So you'll like randomly pick 7. Both sides will play with the same 7. When you get control of a Mondamenti, you're able to basically put your disc to get access to a special ability. And it's not a team ability. It's if I control that Mondamenti, I get to place one of my markers. So it's giving me an ability. So you're talking to your teammate like, hey, I think you'd be better if you take that ability. I'll take this ability. So I thought that was really cool. And the abilities are cool. Also, the combat in this game has like, there are 2 ways you can do combat. And one way is the brutal method. And it's deterministic. You move into an area, you have to remove 2 of your own cubes, and then you simultaneously reveal 1 and 1, attacker and defender cube, attacker. So you can, if you're doing a brutal, if you know you have enough more cubes than the area that you're trying to take over, just go in there and do that brutal attack. But there's another way, which this is, some people are going to love, some people are going to hate, but it's called finesse. And with finesse, every player has these 3 conflict cards. So Alan, if I'm coming to attack your area and I decide to do a finesse turn, we each pick one of these 3 cards and we put it face down. Then starting with me, I have to decide if I want to take your card and put it on my side or leave it with you. And then you have the same decision about my card. Either leave it with me or you take it. And one of the cards is good. It's a turncoat card, which basically means you get to like swap out an enemy cube with your own. So that's good if it's on my side. But the other 2 are called coward, and it's going to make you remove 1 or 2 soldiers. So it's like it's a big mind twist, right? Because if I put a card that's turncoat and you leave it on my side, that's good for me. But if you take it, that's bad for me. So it's very much a mind game thing. But you have the option of just doing the brutal attacks that are deterministic if that's not your play style. And then like the team collaboration was really cool. I can give my partner a coin, but for every coin I give them, I have to pay 1 to the supply. Money is so tight in this game. That's what like made me get this like heavy economic Euro thing. Like you are spending money for so many things, and it became a struggle at some point. And you can use your teammates' speedboats, and you just like, you're working together to like, hey, maybe my partner wants to help me get control. So we go the route where I get 5 versus we both get 6. We all just enjoyed this immensely. Like I played with Steph Hodge and Michael and their friend Jay, and we learned it from the rule book. So it took us 4 hours. I think about 4 hours total. And I think this would be like about a 3-hour game, even if you know the rules. So I'm excited to play this more because it's just really, really different. The way it like has area control, but also a really cool action selection system.
Well, that certainly is a mouthful, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a big one. But yeah, that is La Famiglia. Right. Yeah, I don't know that that'll be in your wheelhouse at all.
Probably not, although it sounds really interesting. Lots of good ideas.
Cool. Well, we'll do, I guess, one more game each. So what's the next game you want to talk about?
Since I've been very interested in legacy games for the last few years, and And one of the games that was a few years ago nominated for Game of the Year was The Adventures of Robin Hood. And it was real hard to get a copy of the game, but eventually I did get one, and I've played a bunch of the games of the campaign with our local friends. And it's got some very clever ideas. I mean, the board, you flip over little discs on the board, so they have two-sided. In each game, they reset. Most of them reset, and that is just such a clever mechanic. I'm surprised that, and maybe they do later in the campaign, but in the games I've played, I'm surprised they don't introduce new discs that you can put into the board, just to add some more variety. But even with the ones they have, it's very clever. The other thing that's really nice about the game is you draw discs out of a bag to tell you basically what type of turn you're going to take. And if you draw a red disc, I think it's red disc, the bad guys get to do something. If you draw a certain color, that's the player color. And then there's a bunch of discs where you have to decide like who gets the turn. And in cooperative games, that's always pretty fun. Because everybody wants to take the turn, obviously. You have to decide, and it's really fun. And there's also a big book where you're reading the results of things, where you get to, interact with a character or the board. Then you have to go to the book and read the book. For quite a few of the games, our friend's son was actually reading the book, so he wasn't playing, but other than reading the book.
It's your narrator.
It was really fun actually to have him. And I would say the game took too long just because we were sort of socializing as much as playing the game. It was a very fun experience, and everybody wanted to play again each time, so it was good. And we haven't played in a couple of months, but I would still like to get back to it. So
cool.
I'm enjoying it enough for that. The movement system is kind of a miniatures movement system where you have pieces and you play one piece and then play the next piece next to it to show how far you can go. Very nice little movement system, I thought. Simple but clever, because if you don't use all your movement pieces, you get something extra. Real nice. And the trick to each game is it's sort of a little puzzle where you're trying to figure out how to solve the puzzle in the game. Like you need to go and steal the treasure in the castle. And some of that's easy, but then you have to figure out how to get out of the castle too, So there's, it's very light. I mean, but I thought it was really fun. And like I said, the flipping the pieces over on the board is a very clever mechanic, and I think you'll see it in something else, maybe on
cool.
a scale, or because like I said, you could easily have multiples of each piece, and so you could replace them in games. So I could see why the jury selected it, because it has a lot of very innovative ideas.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and this is Michael Menzel, who does the art and game design for this one. I played one scenario of this, but it was back when it was being nominated for the Spiel des Jahres or one of the awards. And the version that Lincoln and Nikki had was I guess German. And so they had to get translations on all, because there is a lot of narrative in it. So there was the first scenario that was kind of translated that we played through just to get a flavor for the game, so that we could do our episode where we were voting on who we thought were going to win different games. And I remember thinking it was pretty cool. And I do love games like that where the turn order where you're randomly pulling things out of a bag for turn order. So I need to get back to this one too, because I definitely thought it was fun, and I have a group that I think would really enjoy it, but I just haven't gotten it to the table yet.
Yeah.
Cool. So that is The Adventures of Robin Hood. And the last game I'll mention is a game that Eric Martin was playing. Like most people who would walk by Eric at BGG.Spring, he's playing Garden Guests. And yeah, Garden Guests is a game by Stephen Glenn, and it's from Van Ryder Games. It came out last year in 2023. And I saw it's a re-implementation of a Cosmos game from 2015 called Loomis. der Parfum des Fjords. This one plays with 2 to 6 players, and it's basically a team abstract strategy game that looks really pretty because the main game board is this big hexagon garden with little hexagon spaces that have different flowers on them. Most of the flowers have a green background, but there are some spaces which are pedestal spaces that have an off-white background. And what happens is you're trying to compete to make a path across the game board faster than the other team. Or I think you could play 2v2v2 with 6 if you want, but we did 3v3 in the game that I played. And you have these cards. So on your turn, the cards are different types of flowers. Well, I want to say there were 4 different types of flowers. And on your turn, you can use cards from your hand to build a tower, or you can like expand. So the pedestal spaces, once you have your bug disc on there, you can, if you have your bug disc on another place, it's called making a colony. You can fill in the spaces between it by playing cards that match the types of flowers. And then your colony is kind of locked in. Because if you haven't locked in the path, your opponents can play more cards and take over these colony spaces. So on your turn, you're either playing cards to put stuff on the board to help, make your path across the board, or you can draw cards or give cards to a teammate. And like when you're drawing cards or giving cards to a teammate, each team has 2 cards called, I think, collection cards. And they're double-sided. So one card has a 1 on one side and a 4 on the other side. And then there's a 2 with a 3 on the other side. So maybe right now my team has the 1 face up, the 3 face up. If I decide to pass you, Alan, you're on my team, I pass you 1 card, we flip that 1 card over. So now it's showing 4. So now when it comes to be your turn, you could draw 4 cards. And if you do, you flip that card back to the one side. So there's this flippy thing where the amount of cards you can either draw or pass to one of your teammates is based on these collection cards that you have. It was neat. I liked it. Like we were cutting each other off as we're making these paths. You're finding clever ways to kind of like get to the end of the path. It's a really good looking game. I will say the components, we had some issues where like we ran out of some of the tokens, and these are nice, like chunky. I want to say they feel like the Azul pieces, except they're rounded, but some of the colors were causing confusion. And also we ran out of tokens, which wasn't great, but otherwise I don't know if that just happens when you play with 6 players, but it was really a really good looking game. And I like the tactile experience of, putting these stones out there. And also I just like abstract strategy games. So I thought this was slick, where you can trade cards with your teammates and you're trying to like, read each other's minds of like, hey, which way are we going to try to take this across the board? So yeah, so I liked it. I think Eric will likely probably either make a video or write a review about it, considering the amount of times he played it. Have you seen this one?
I haven't, but Steven's a good buddy, so I'm glad to see
cool.
that you like the game, and I'm glad to see Eric likes it. That's
yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to do a game order later, and that was going to be on it. So
cool. Yeah, definitely pick it up. I'm probably going to get this one too. Because I don't know, I love abstract strategy games and I love team games. And it's like, it's easy. You can break it out with, anybody. I like that you can play it 1v1 or that you have all these options for team games. I suspect that it might be best with 4 or 1, like 2v2 or 1v1. But who knows? I'm totally down to try the 2v2v2 also with 6. But yeah, this Garden Guest was really solid, and yeah, I'm probably going to pick it up myself. And now a word from our sponsor. Ticket to Ride is celebrating its 20th anniversary. In 20 years, the world has changed, but the game remains timeless. Alan R. Moon has placed his little trains all over the globe. With 18 million copies sold, can you imagine how many games have been played? This summer, Ticket to Ride invites us on a journey. Start with a city trip to Paris with the new Cities Edition. Simple, strategic, and perfect for exploring the City of Light. It's ideal for slipping into your travel bag. And if you're craving something more thrilling, try the new Iberia expansion, featuring 2 maps, Iberia and South Korea. A little secret, there's going to be some destination drafting in the air. So what are you waiting for? Head to your local game store or shop online and celebrate Ticket to Ride's 20th anniversary in style. Make every trip a new adventure. Ticket to Ride, the new classic of modern board gaming. Well, it is that time for us to talk about or vent about our board game hobby, Pet Peeves. So, Alan, I'm going to let you start with your first one since you picked the topic. But I also initially I was just going to let you have your pet peeves and I would chime in with my thoughts. But then I was like, you know what? I have some pet peeves myself. So, so I'm going to share some of mine too.
Well, I think one of my big ones as a game designer is whenever people use the term broken, and you'll hear it a lot, and to me, it's very insulting as a game designer if somebody says this is broken. Yeah. And what they really mean is they don't like something, or that they think, you hear that there's a perfect strategy and the game is broken. No, that's just, it's ridiculous. And so there are almost no broken games. When a game gets published, it's not broken. It works fine. You may not like it. You may not like you think there's a perfect strategy or something like that, but it's not broken. It's just your personal opinion. And people say about the perfect strategy type thing, well, they go, there's only one way to play this. And I go, well, if everybody is playing that perfect strategy, only one of you is going to win. So I guarantee you that if that's happening, you probably need to change your strategy and find another way to win. Yeah. So, that's part of it. But people are just amazing. Like every time a Ticket to Ride expansion map comes out, somebody says, well, this is broken. And I go, no, it's not. I said, you've played it once and you have no idea what. And I saw a recent thread where they were still talking about the UK expansion. And then there's a big line that you get tons of points from Southampton to New York, which I put in originally because my grandfather sailed on was a steward on the Queen Mary or the Queen Elizabeth. I get them confused. And I put that in, and and I knew people were going to complain about it, but it's like such an interesting. I love traps. As a game designer, I like to put traps in games where if you think that that's the winning strategy, I want you to go for it and learn that that's not really the winning strategy. So I think that's really cool. And so you're gonna the next Ticket to Ride expansion that's coming out, number 8, has a bunch of that type of thing. Traps. Where there's gonna seem like you want to do this, and I guarantee you that at the start you're gonna say, "Oh, well, this is broken," and I'm like, "No, it's not."
Yeah.
So it's that's just, and I just think we can get to the rest of it, but people are, on Board Game Geek. I wish people would just be a little calmer and a little friendlier. They can be so nasty, and I look at Settlers of Catan, and Settlers of Catan has 127,000 ratings or something, which is a pretty big number, right?
Yeah.
And most of those ratings are 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if you're rating the game a 1, it's like you're probably in, the 1 percentile or less. And I'm like, so you're right, and all those 100,000 other people are wrong. And I just think, and so you're entitled to your opinion, and I think that's great. And you can, but they're so nasty. I'm like, this is the worst game ever designed. Right? No, it's not. It sold 30 million copies.
It's one thing if it's not for you, but to just trash a game for just the sake of trashing it is pretty not cool. Not cool. And I totally feel you with the the broken thing. I know some people that I've gamed with, as soon as they play something, they'll make a claim like that, and I never like feel that. Also, along those lines, I was just talking about forum Trajanum. I heard from someone that there's like a dominant strategy, but to me, I thought the same thing as you. If there is like something really cool to do, then compete for it, like
Yeah.
loop everyone in and see who does it the best, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean the game is broken.
I think there's only been a couple of games that I've played in my whole life where, I thought like, how could they possibly have published this? It just doesn't work. There was a game at the Gathering one year. I think it was Edison and Co. And it was like, if you didn't play it with, people who hadn't played, you weren't ever going to get to play it because nobody wanted to play it again. It was just, and what I remember about it was that I didn't do anything in the game, basically. I mean, there was like my turn was almost nothing. And I won the game. And I was like, well, how did I win that? I don't even know, right? It was an amazing thing. It was like nothing really happened in the game. And at the end, and I was like, I just don't understand how they could publish something like that. But that's a real rare case. I mean, when games get published, you assume that they've been play tested and developed, and so it would be today's games, when they come out. I mean, people always say, "Oh, it was play tested so much," and designers do play test a lot. But the problem is when the game, not the problem, but the issue is when the game comes out, all of a sudden thousands of people play the game, right? And so that's the real play testing. You do the best you can as a designer, but you can't cover anything, especially in these super complicated games.
Sure.
You're never going to see everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're not broken. They just, they might not be as well balanced as somebody likes, or, these asymmetrical games, it must be incredibly hard to balance those. I mean, so.
Yeah. I did an interview with Helge Ostertag, who did Age of Innovation, which is like a new version of Terra Mystica. And it's just, there's so many different combinations of how factions can be set up. And it's to think about playtesting games like that, it's got to be insane.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And it's, you'll never be able to cover everything.
Yeah. Sure.
So my pet peeve, the first one I'll mention, is when people, sometimes I could be a grammar police person. I don't know, maybe I should have been an English teacher, but when people mix up dice and die, like the singular is a die. If they're multiple, they're dice, 2 dice, 1 die. And it just, I think when I watch like review videos, of content creators, I'm like, no, you got to get this right. You got to get this right. So it is just like a pet peeve of mine when people don't use die and dice properly.
Yeah.
And I try not to, but I do sometimes correct people that I'm playing with. But yeah, so that's my pet peeve. Has that ever bothered you or given you trouble?
I mean, because I was an English major, stuff like that bothers me. When you listen to newscast or sportscasters, particularly, you hear some of the dumbest things ever, right? Things like particular words, like everybody was going nuclear, like,
yeah.
And it sounds horrible. It just, I don't know.
I also think, English is tough and can be weird because, sure, it could have been something where it's 1 dice, 2 dice, 3 dice, but it's just not. So I'm trying to get in the habit of saying 1 die, 3 dice.
Yep.
All right. What is your next pet peeve?
Well, there's been a lot of stuff in the last year in particular about solo mode of games. And, I think if you want to play games solo, that's fine. But to me, a game, it's all about the social aspects for me. I love playing games with people. I don't want to play games solo. To me, that's just a puzzle. I'm just sitting there trying to figure out. And I do puzzles like I do spelling bee every day, and I do connections and those type of things. but like for board games, I don't really understand it. And now people are going, well, you've got to have a solo mode. And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm just not interested. And it's been amazing to me. Like and my natural response whenever I hear that is like, go get some friends. Like,
Well,
and I know that's I know that's kind of mean, and I don't want to be mean, and like I know there are certain situations where people, they can't play with others, but I mean, really, the games, the beauty and the joy of games is getting to play with other people. I mean, that's just part of it, and so the whole solo mode thing just kind of drives me crazy, especially because it's getting so much emphasis these days.
yeah, I'll have to say, like, I like playing games solo. So I am one of those people, but I don't think that every single game needs to have a solo mode. I
Yeah,
think that's something like since the pandemic, a lot more people got into playing board games solo.
yeah,
I have friends who are board gamers who are just like, if I'm going to play by myself, I'll play a video game. But for me, just in the sense that you like doing puzzles, I liked the tactile experience of playing games and holding cards and pushing pieces around. And I think that in times where, yeah, people aren't available or nobody wants to play a certain game that I have, or I'm trying to, like, early on when I started playing board games, before I taught a game, I would try to, like, do a dry run by myself. It's something that I think is, for me, like, if I have a day and I can just sit down with like a cool big solo game, I really enjoy it. However, I don't think, like, there's so many games that have solo modes, and while that's serving again this audience of people who like maybe are only playing games solo, I personally don't play a lot of, like, how do I say this? I don't play a lot of games solo, but like there's certain games that I really enjoy, but there are tons that have solo modes that I'm just like not really interested in playing certain games solo, if that
yeah.
makes sense. But
I,
I but I am on the, I love the social side of playing games with people, but I also am just obsessed with games. So I find enjoyment playing by myself periodically, not nearly as often as playing with people. But yeah, it is like, I don't think people should be demanding a solo mode for every game, but if people want to include it, you'll definitely hit a wider audience at this point because there are so many people who are into that only play games solo.
Yeah, I mean, I always wonder, like, can't they play online if they can't get people, in person? There's so many opportunities that with all the sites to play online now too. And I don't do a lot of that, but we've been trying to establish like a regular day a week to, play with friends, and it's really fun. And I almost don't care what the game is. I'm just, having a great time with my friends.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it just kind of depends on what people like, what brings them joy about games. Because to me, I don't really like playing online. Like, I've done, BGA is so smooth. You can play certain things so fast and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
But I strongly prefer like the analog experience of having a game on the table. But yeah, it's totally like, there are some people who like the number one thing for with board gaming is to have the social experience, and that's one of my favorite things about it too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, do you want to hear my next pet
Sure.
peeve?
What do you got?
Okay, my next pet peeve is AP. Analysis
I,
paralysis drives me crazy
I'm with you.
because, yeah,
I'm with.
like, we're not playing for like lottery money. We're just playing, especially like if it's a new game. Like, there are people who, most people want to win the game, but to take so much time to kind of like think through every possible thing, you're like sucking the enjoyment out of the overall experience from other people. And I'm not going to say that I've never taken a slow turn. I have, but like we all have, I'm sure. But there's certain gamers that get extreme with it because they care so much about winning. And, you know, for me, like, again, part of the joy I get from gaming is besides the social experiences, I like just exploring the game design. Like these are artistic creations that game designers put out. And I love like pulling levers and everything and just kind of seeing how it works, especially on a first play. I'm just trying to learn the game. And then there are just some people who are just like taking it seriously, like they're going to win $25,000 if they win the game.
They're afraid of making a mistake too, which is like, to me, mistakes in games are part of what makes it fun. And when you make a mistake, it throws off that perfect turn, and it just makes it more interesting. And for me, I have the same peeve. Like, and basically, I have a very simple solution. I just don't play with people like that again. I mean, it's not fun. If three people are sitting on the table just staring at somebody taking 15 minutes to take a turn, those three people are not having any fun at all. And it's crazy. Yeah.
I think also like there are, and it depends on the game too, but there are some people that I notice instead of like a lot of 18xx rulebooks say, hey, think about what you want to do when it's not your turn. So you have an idea, but there are certain people, like certain players that I notice that I'll play with that, not necessarily 18xx, but will just wait until their turn comes around to start thinking about what they want to do. And that just increases the amount of downtime. And it's so that drives me crazy. So you also were talking about, and you kind of touched on this a bit, but like, the people that are rating the 1s and 2s on BGG. Yeah.
The whole thing with, people before the game's even out, people are rating it a 10 or a 1. And, so I'm counterbalancing the 10s by rating it a 1. Well, like, what are you doing? Is that really? And what that leads me into is like, there are people, again, like do all these ratings and like answer every thread and stuff on games they don't like. And I'm like, why? Why don't you go spend your time on something you do like? Why are you wasting your time commenting on every thread about this game that you don't like? I mean, I just don't understand that. That would be, like if I don't like liver and like somebody puts, something up online about liver, I'm like, and I comment every time, like, what's the point?
So much energy, to complain about something you really don't care about.
It's just, again, people just need to, and especially today where there's thousands and thousands of games, you're going to waste your time talking about a game you don't like. Go and find something you do and then champion that game. That's much more productive. I think we need people to do that a lot more. Like if you like a game and it's flying under the radar, be its champion. Go, talk about that game because there are so many games that I'm sure I've missed, in the last 10 years.
Under the radar games, Yeah,
because, like, I mean, one of them for me is like Dice Miner. I think Dice Miner is one of the most clever games ever designed. I mean, it's right up there with Love Letter and Scout and some other things recently. It's just there's lots of luck in it, but, that adds excitement. But it's really flown under the radar. And I think it's a shame. I think it's a great, great game.
I was going to say, like, I think I played this like once, maybe at the gathering when it like was either about to come out or something. But I haven't even heard about this in a while.
I probably played it more than 100 times. I mean, I love this game. It's so fun. And, it can be really, sort of frustrating in that good way where you're trying to roll something and you can't. And I don't know. It's just a terrific game that I feel bad, hasn't really gotten much attention.
My mother always said, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's fine. It's totally fine. Like not everybody's going to like the same games, and it's fine to, give something a review and like make a comment why it wasn't for you or whatever. But yeah, some of it just seems like it's just being mean to be mean. And I agree. Like, I don't know, the people rating things high and then getting into that war with and then people offsetting.
Well, another part of that is sometimes people get sort of what I feel is like too personal. Like, they say, well, his intent was not that, or, they go like, well, I'm sure he's really disappointed in that. And I go, no, I'm not. It's like, don't tell me how I feel about you. I mean, this is a person who doesn't know me, has no idea what I'm like. And he's telling me online that like, no, I'm disappointed in this game. People say things like, oh, well, there's been so much, bad ratings. I'm like, no, there hasn't. I said, you're just seeing it that way. I said, take a look at the real numbers. Board Game Geek isn't everything, but to people, it is really important. It's when you get into mass market games, it doesn't matter. There's just the numbers are too big. But they're talking about like they sort of use the Board Game Geek ratings to support their evidence, whether it's valid or not.
Yeah.
But just the personal stuff is like, no, years and years ago. I tell you, my favorite story about this was when I worked at Avalon Hill, and I went to we went to I guess Atlanticon or Origins one year, and I was running a tournament of Black Spy, which is one of the first games I designed, and this guy in the tournament came up and he said, well, he asked me a rules question. And I told him what the answer was. He goes, no, that's not what the designer intended. And I said, well, let me check.
Busted.
Like, I think that's what I intended. Maybe you know better. I don't know.
That is funny, and that reminds me of something that came up at BGG.Spring. So Roy, that I mentioned from Dice Tower, designed a game called Last Light that came out last year, and it's this like very fast playing 4X space game with these like 3D planets. And he was like walking around BGG.Spring, and there was a table of people that were just about to play it, and they had the rule book open. So he's like, I can help with the teach or whatever. And they have no idea that he's the designer of the game. And he sits down and starts playing with them and doesn't say anything. And then somebody else walked up who knows who he is and, said something, and they were like, so they had no idea that they were, because like a lot of people don't know even if you know a designer's name, you don't necessarily know what they look like. It's wild. The next one that I guess this is like sort of my last pet peeve that I'll bring up is, and Cole Worley brought this to my radar when I did an interview with him on Root, and he was talking about how much effort they put into making sure the rule book was the right size. And ever since I'm like, I realize how much it bothers me. There's so many games that have the 12 by 12 box. And so the rule book will just be 12 by 12. And when you're trying to read it, it's just awkward to hold. It doesn't feel good in the hands. And I don't know if I noticed that until Cole brought it to my radar. But yeah, like, so giant rule books drive me crazy because it's like you want to like enjoy reading through it, but like when your arms are sprawled out because it's so big, that kind of bothers me lately.
I would say, I would say I don't care too much about the size of the rule book, but the size of the type really bothers me because as people get older, everybody almost needs glasses or contacts or something.
Yeah.
If you make a rule book, and this is, more than the rule book is like cards, like Magic the Gathering has done like such a disservice to cards because, they feature the art on the card instead of the text. So you've got this little bitty text, which is like on a fifth of the card. But that's the whole game. The whole game is reading that text, right? And I just don't
squint to read it.
And I saw a game recently, I can't remember the name of it, where it said the art is going to be awesome on this game, and it showed the exact same layout as a Magic card where the text is real. I was like, no, do something innovative and make the text bigger, for us old people, please.
I will say too, I haven't played much Magic, but I've been, for the past year or so, I really like Flesh and Blood, which is another TCG.
Yeah,
And they have the same problem here and there where like the text is really small, or sometimes where it is, like the color of it is blending in, and it's hard to read. And then that is unfortunate when that happens.
yeah. Well, I'm always in favor of functionality over art in games. I think a game can have both, and I would like it to
Yeah.
have both. But I think the functionality is so much more important.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing, rulebook related, that kind of irks me a bit is with games that have been out, in the past, like more recently, the past few years, 5 years, whatever, when the rulebook is not gender neutral. It's like, okay, I get it. Like back in the day, it was mostly guys who were probably playing games, but there have been lots of women playing games, and it's just like, just be gender neutral with your rule books. Because, like, I don't want to read a rule book that says his and he's going to put his piece here, because I'm like, that's like making me feel like I am not supposed to be playing this. And
Yeah.
I want to
I think
play.
game companies are coming around to that.
Yeah.
I think people, I think they're a little bit impatient because they want, game companies to change everything right now, and it's just going to take a while. I mean, it's just about money. They can't afford to reprint everything and do it. But I think all the major companies, I've got to believe,
are more aware and making changes. Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. It's a slow. Any change like this is going to be a slower progression.
Yeah. I think people are aware that that's an issue, and it's going to be resolved. It's just not happening fast enough for some people.
Yeah, and also just like even outside of the gender neutrality, sometimes you read a rule book that's just terrible, and you're like, how did this rule book kind of like get out of the gates? Like, did they play test it with people out? Blind play test it with anyone sometimes? So there's still just like more work to do with improving rule books across the board. But yeah, it's not everybody. And thankfully there are also lots of great videos out there to help. And BGG to ask questions.
Yeah, that's a huge improvement. I mean, I tell people all the time, if you're having trouble learning a game, just go up to on BGG and find the how to play video. It's so much easier if everybody just sits there for 10 minutes and watches the video than trying to explain the rules. That's great. I just think that's a huge improvement for games. Yeah.
Cool. So did you have any other pet peeves that you wanted to bring up?
I mean, I don't think any we should talk about on the show.
You're like, we've said enough. We vented enough for today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, like I said, this was, Alan, it's great to talk to you, and I'm glad you suggested doing something a little bit off the beaten path here.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Candice. It's always fun to talk about games no matter what you're talking about. So thanks.
Absolutely. And I hope to catch you soon. I don't know if you're going to be at any conventions coming up. I know you're dealing with some family stuff that might
I'm hoping to be at BGG. I had such a great time last fall. It was so interesting to me because there weren't a lot of designers there. And so I had a great time. I had no real agenda other than to just have some fun. And so
cool.
Got to, hang out with the designers who were there and lots of other people and just play a bunch of games. It was a really fun week, and I'm hoping to be back for, even more days this year.
Awesome. Well, I hope to see you there. And maybe we'll get a game in together.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Thanks again, Alan.
All right. Thank you, Candice.
You've been listening to the Board Game Geek podcast, produced and edited by Candice Harris. Special thanks to Matt Fonda for editing and mixing our music. Be sure to visit us on the web at BoardGameGeek.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch under Board Game Geek. And you can reach us by email at podcast@BoardGameGeek.com. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming!